What the cowboy said stunned everyone. After the mail-order bride arrived to find another woman, Ethan Miller had spent most of his life under the open sky. The land was wide, quiet, and honest, much like him. His ranch sat far from town, surrounded by dry grass, wooden fences, and long dirt roads that seemed to stretch forever. Every morning, he woke before sunrise, fed the animals, checked the fences, and worked until the sun dipped low. Days were full, but the nights were empty. Silence followed him into the small wooden house where only the sound of the wind kept him company. Ethan was not a man of many words. He had learned early in life that hard work spoke louder than promises. After his parents passed away, the ranch became his full responsibility. Friends slowly drifted away. Some moved to cities, others started families. Ethan stayed. He believed the land needed him, and maybe, deep inside, he felt safer with routine than with people. But as years passed, the loneliness grew heavier, especially during long evenings when there was no one to share a meal with or talk about the day. In town, people knew Ethan as the quiet cowboy who minded his own business. He was respected, but rarely invited anywhere, not because he was disliked, but because he never seemed to belong. When neighbors spoke about families, children, and shared memories, Ethan listened politely and smiled, but inside he felt like a visitor in someone else's life. He began to wonder if this was how his life would always be, useful, stable, and alone. One winter evening, while sitting near the fireplace, Ethan read a newspaper article that would quietly change everything. It spoke about people who found companionship through letters, connecting with others far away who shared similar hopes. The idea stayed in his mind longer than he expected. At first he laughed at himself. Writing letters felt strange, almost childish, but as the fire burned low and the house stayed silent, the thought returned again and again. What if there was someone else out there who wanted a simple life, someone who would understand the value of honesty and effort? After days of thinking, Ethan finally wrote a letter. His words were careful and plain. He wrote about the ranch, the hard work, and the quiet nights. He did not promise comfort or luxury. He only promised respect, safety, and a chance to build something real. He sealed the envelope with a steady hand, though his heart beat faster than usual. Sending that letter felt like opening a door he had kept closed for years. Weeks passed with no reply. Ethan went back to his routine, but something had changed. He checked the mailbox every day, even when he told himself not to expect anything. Then one afternoon, a letter arrived. The handwriting was neat and gentle. The letter was from a woman named Clara. She wrote about her own quiet life, her love for simple things, and her hope for a future that felt meaningful. Her words were warm but honest, not full of big promises. Ethan read the letter twice, then a third time. From that day on, letters traveled back and forth. They spoke about daily life, past struggles, and small dreams. Ethan shared stories about the ranch and the land, while Clara wrote about her patience, her strength, and her desire to belong somewhere. There was comfort in these letters. No pressure, no pretending. Just two people learning about each other, one page at a time. As months passed, their letters grew longer. Ethan found himself smiling more often, even laughing quietly at Clara's thoughtful words. For the first time in years, he felt seen, even from far away. Clara, too, seemed to find comfort in their connection. She wrote about how she imagined the open land, the peaceful mornings, and a life built on trust rather than noise. Eventually, the idea of meeting became real. They discussed it carefully with respect and honesty. Ethan explained the challenges of ranch life. Claire asked questions, not out of fear, but out of preparation. When the decision was finally made for Clara to travel and begin a new chapter, Ethan felt a mix of hope and worry. He prepared the house, fixed small things he had ignored for years, and even planted flowers near the porch. Each task felt like a promise to the future. The night before Clara was expected to arrive, Ethan barely slept. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at the letters he had saved. Doubt tried to creep in. What if she regretted coming? What if he was not enough? But he pushed those thoughts aside. He reminded himself that honesty had brought them this far. Morning came slowly. Ethan put on a clean shirt, brushed his hair, and stepped outside. The land looked the same as always, but to him everything felt different. The road leading to the ranch seemed longer, full of possibility. As he waited, his heart carried years of silence and the fragile hope of change. Far away, Clara was nearing the end of her journey, carrying her own fears and expectations. Neither of them knew exactly what the future held, but both believed that sometimes courage was simply choosing not to be alone anymore. And so, on that quiet ranch, a story that began with ink and paper was about to step into real life, bringing with it promises, uncertainty, and a moment that would soon change everything. Clara's journey had been long and tiring, She had traveled for days, moving from one place to another, carrying a small suitcase and a heart full of mixed emotions. Every mile brought her closer to the life she had imagined through letters. She reread Ethan's words many times during the journey, finding comfort in his simple honesty. When the final stop came and she stepped down, the air felt different, drier, quieter, and wide open. This was the land he had written about so often. A wagon from the town took her the rest of the way. As they moved farther from the small streets and buildings, the world seemed to open up. Fields stretched endlessly, broken only by fences and distant trees. Clara held her breath as the ranch finally came into view. The house was modest, wooden, and surrounded by open land. It looked peaceful, just as she had imagined. But as the wagon slowed, something caught her attention. There were signs of life she had not expected. Clothes hung on a line near the house, more than one person's belongings. A second chair rested on the porch. Clara felt her chest tighten. This was not what she had pictured. Her hands trembled slightly as she stepped down from the wagon. The driver gave her a polite nod and left, and suddenly she was standing alone in front of the ranch. Before she could gather her thoughts, she heard laughter coming from inside the house. It was a woman's voice. Clara froze. Her mind raced with questions. Had she misunderstood the letters? Had Ethan hidden something from her? Doubt washed over her like a cold wind. For a moment she considered turning around and leaving before anyone noticed her. She slowly walked toward the door, her footsteps heavy with uncertainty. Through the window she caught a brief glimpse of another woman, moving about comfortably as if she belonged there. Clara's heart sank. The journey, the hope, the courage it took to come this far, all of it suddenly felt fragile. She stood on the porch, unsure whether to knock. Her thoughts battled each other. One part of her wanted answers, the other wanted to escape the pain before it grew deeper. Finally, she lifted her hand and knocked gently. The door opened, and the woman inside looked surprised. She was older than Clara, with tired eyes but a calm expression. Before either could speak, Ethan appeared behind her. His face changed the moment he saw Clara standing there. Surprise, worry, and relief crossed his face all at once. Clara spoke first, her voice steady, despite the storm inside her. She greeted him politely, but her eyes searched his face for truth. Ethan invited her inside, sensing the tension. The room felt warm but awkward, filled with unspoken questions. The other woman stepped back quietly, giving them space. For a few moments, no one spoke. The silence felt heavier than words. Clara finally asked the question that had been growing in her heart since she arrived. She asked who the other woman was and why she had not known about her. Ethan did not avoid her gaze. He took a deep breath and began to explain. The woman was Margaret, a relative who had lost her husband and had fallen ill. She had come to stay temporarily while she recovered. Ethan admitted he had meant to write about it, but had delayed, believing it would be easier to explain in person. He knew now that this was a mistake. Clara listened quietly. His explanation made sense, but the pain of surprise still lingered. She felt embarrassed for assuming the worst, yet hurt that she had arrived without knowing the full truth. Margaret, sensing Clara's discomfort, spoke gently. She explained her situation and apologized for the confusion, assuring Clara that nothing had been hidden with bad intentions. Despite the explanations, Clara's emotions were tangled. She had left everything familiar behind for a future that now felt uncertain. She wondered if this was a sign she should not have come. The ranch suddenly felt larger and lonelier than before. Ethan noticed her distant expression and suggested she rest. He showed her to a small room that had been prepared for her arrival. The bed was neatly made, and a small vase of flowers sat on the table. The effort touched her, reminding her of the man who had written those sincere letters. That evening they shared a quiet meal. Conversation was polite but careful. Clara spoke little, lost in thought. She watched Ethan closely, noticing how he treated Margaret with patience and respect. There was no discomfort or secrecy in his actions. Slowly, her anger softened, replaced by cautious understanding. Later, Clara stepped outside alone. The sky was wide and filled with stars. She breathed deeply, letting the calm of the land settle her thoughts. She reminded herself that real life was never as simple as letters. People carried responsibilities, histories, and unexpected moments. Inside the house, Ethan sat silently, worried he had already lost her trust. He replayed his choices in his mind, wishing he had handled things differently. For the first time, he feared that honesty delayed was honesty damaged. When Clara returned, she told Ethan she needed time. She was not ready to make any decisions. Ethan respected her words. He did not pressure her or defend himself further. He only promised to answer any questions she had whenever she was ready to ask. That night, Clara lay awake, listening to the quiet sounds of the ranch. She thought about the courage it had taken to come and the strength it would take to stay. The future was no longer clear, but it was real. And for now, that was enough. As the house settled into silence, 3 lives rested under the same roof, each carrying hope, regret, and the weight of choices yet to be made. The arrival that was meant to begin a simple love story had instead opened the door to truth, patience, and a test neither had expected, but one that would shape everything that followed. Morning arrived slowly at the ranch. The sunlight crept through the windows, soft and pale, touching the wooden floors and the quiet walls. Clara woke early, though she had barely slept. Her mind was full of thoughts that would not rest. For a moment she lay still, listening to the distant sounds of animals and the gentle wind outside. This place was calm, yet her heart felt heavy. She got out of bed and dressed quietly, careful not to wake anyone. When she stepped outside, the cool air greeted her. The land looked endless, just as Ethan had described in his letters. In the early light, everything felt honest and real. Clara walked slowly along the fence, trying to sort her feelings. She reminded herself why she had come so far. She had wanted truth, stability, and a chance to belong. Now that she was here, those dreams felt close, yet uncertain. Inside the house, Ethan was already awake. He had spent the early hours working, hoping the movement would calm his thoughts. He felt regret sitting heavily on his chest. He knew he had not lied, but he also knew he had not been fully open at the right time. To him, the situation with Margaret had felt temporary, almost unimportant compared to the future he imagined with Clara. Now he realized how wrong that thinking had been. Margaret noticed the tension, too. She moved carefully around the house, speaking little. She did not want to be the reason for discomfort. Though she was grateful for Ethan's help, she worried that her presence might ruin something important for him. She decided that when the time was right, she would speak honestly, even if it meant making a difficult choice. Later that morning, Clara returned inside. Ethan greeted her gently, offering coffee and a quiet smile. She returned the smile, though it did not reach her eyes. They sat at the table, facing each other, unsure where to begin. The silence stretched, but it was not empty. It was full of questions waiting to be spoken. Clara finally broke the silence. She told Ethan that she needed to understand everything clearly. She asked about Margaret's situation, how long she would stay, and why he had not mentioned it before. Her voice was calm but firm. She was no longer afraid to ask. Ethan listened carefully, grateful for the chance to explain fully. He spoke slowly, choosing his words with care. He explained that Margaret had arrived suddenly, after losing her husband and struggling to care for herself. He had not planned for her stay, but he could not turn her away. He admitted that he feared Clara might change her mind if she knew, and that fear had guided his silence. Saying it out loud made him realize how selfish that fear had been. Clara appreciated his honesty, even though it hurt. She told him that surprises made trust difficult, especially when someone left everything behind. She explained how alone she had felt standing on the porch, thinking she had made a terrible mistake. Her words were not angry, but they were honest. Ethan felt them deeply. Margaret joined them then, her expression serious. She apologized directly to Clara, not for existing, but for the confusion and discomfort. She explained that she had never intended to stay long, and that she would make other arrangements soon if needed. Her voice carried both gratitude and guilt. Clara listened, touched by Margaret's kindness. She realized that none of them were trying to hurt each other. They were simply dealing with life as it came, imperfect and unplanned. Still, understanding did not erase the weight of the situation. Clara needed space to feel secure again. That afternoon, Ethan suggested they take a walk around the ranch. He thought it might help Clara see the life he had imagined sharing. She agreed, though cautiously. They walked side by side, not too close, not too far. Ethan showed her the animals, the fields, and the places where he spent most of his days. He spoke about his routines, his responsibilities, and the pride he felt in caring for the land. Clara listened quietly. She noticed the way Ethan spoke to the animals, gentle and patient. She saw how he repaired a broken fence without complaint. These small actions told her more than letters ever could. But she began to see the man behind the words, flawed but sincere. As they walked, Clara shared parts of her own story she had not written about. She spoke of past disappointments, of learning to rely on herself, and of the fear of trusting again. Ethan listened without interruption. He did not try to fix her feelings or promise anything. He simply listened. That alone made her feel lighter. When they returned to the house, the mood had softened. Not everything was resolved, but something important had shifted. That evening, they sat together with Margaret, sharing a simple meal. Conversation flowed more naturally. Laughter even found its way into the room, quiet but real. Later, Ethan spoke openly about the future. He told Clara that he wanted honesty above all else, even when it was uncomfortable. He admitted that he had a lot to learn about communication and trust. Clara appreciated his willingness to grow. She told him she was not ready to decide anything yet, but she was willing to stay and see who he truly was. That night, Clara wrote in her journal something she had not done in a long time. She wrote about fear, courage, and the strange comfort of truth. She realized that real life did not follow neat plans. It tested people, challenged expectations, and revealed character in unexpected ways. Ethan, too, reflected quietly. He understood now that love was not about avoiding hard moments, but facing them honestly. He knew he had nearly lost Clara's trust, but he also felt grateful for the chance to rebuild it. Margaret made her decision that night as well. She would begin looking for another place to stay soon, not because she was unwelcome, but because she did not want to stand in the way of something meaningful. She knew that sometimes caring for others meant stepping back. As the house grew quiet again, each of them lay awake with their own thoughts. The truth had come into the open, bringing discomfort but also clarity. Nothing was fixed, but nothing was hidden anymore. The ranch, silent and steady, stood witness to these unfolding changes. What had begun with confusion was slowly turning into understanding. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time since Clara's arrival, it felt possible. Life at the ranch did not stop for confusion or feelings. Animals still needed care, meals still needed to be cooked, and the land still demanded attention. Clara watched all of this closely. She did not rush to judge or decide. Instead, she observed. She noticed how Ethan moved through his day with steady focus, how he never complained, and how he always made sure Margaret was comfortable before thinking of himself. Word of Clara's arrival slowly spread to the nearby town. People were curious. A woman arriving from far away was not something they saw often. Some spoke kindly, others whispered without knowing the full story. When Ethan went into town to get supplies, he felt the looks and quiet questions. He had expected this. Still, it made him uneasy. He knew people would form their own opinions before hearing the truth. One afternoon, Ethan suggested that Clara come with him to town. He did not push her, but he did not hide the invitation either. Clara hesitated. Part of her wanted to stay away from curious eyes. Another part knew that hiding would only make things harder. After a moment, she agreed. The town was small, with a few shops and familiar faces. As they walked together, conversations paused. People looked, some smiled politely, others simply stared. Clara kept her head high, though her heart beat fast. She felt exposed, like a story people wanted to read without permission. At the general store, a few women greeted Ethan and glanced at Clara. One of them asked a simple question, but the tone carried curiosity. Before Clara could respond, Ethan spoke calmly. He introduced Clara with respect, saying she had traveled far and deserved kindness. His voice was steady, not defensive. The room grew quiet. People listened. Then someone mentioned Margaret. The air changed. This was the moment Ethan had feared. He felt every eye turned toward him, waiting for an explanation. Ethan took a breath. He could have stayed quiet or brushed it off. Instead, he chose honesty. He spoke openly, explaining Margaret's situation and his mistake in not sharing everything sooner. He did not make excuses. He did not place blame. He admitted his fear of losing Clara before she arrived, and acknowledged that fear had led him to make a poor choice. His words were simple but sincere. The store was silent. No one had expected such openness. People were used to half-truths and quiet defenses, not honesty spoken without pride. Clara stood beside him, surprised. She felt something shift inside her. It was one thing to explain privately, another to speak the truth in front of others, knowing judgment might follow. After a moment, one of the older townspeople nodded slowly. Others followed. The tension eased. Conversations resumed, softer now. Ethan's words had not only cleared the air, they had changed it. On the way back to the ranch, Clara finally spoke. She told Ethan she had not expected him to say so much, especially in public. Ethan replied honestly. He said that hiding only made things worse and that he did not want Clara to feel like a secret or a mistake. He wanted her to know where she stood. That evening, Margaret shared news of her own. She had spoken with a friend in town who was willing to help her find a place nearby. It would take some time, but a path was opening. She reassured both Ethan and Clara that she was grateful and that she never wanted to cause pain. Clara thanked her sincerely. There was no anger in her heart toward Margaret anymore, only understanding. As days passed, Clara and Ethan began talking more freely. Not about the future and big promises, but about small things. What made them laugh? What tired them? What they feared? These conversations were not dramatic, but they were real. Trust did not return all at once, but piece by piece. One evening, as the sun set low, Clara sat on the porch alone. Ethan joined her, keeping a respectful distance. The sky was painted with soft colors, and the land was quiet. Clara spoke first. She told him that when she arrived and saw another woman, she felt foolish and small. She felt like she had believed in something that did not exist. Ethan listened carefully. When she finished, he spoke words that would later be remembered by everyone who heard them. Would, he said, that if Clara chose to leave, he would accept it without anger. He said she owed him nothing. He told her that real care meant wanting someone's happiness, even if it did not include him. Those words stunned her, not because they were dramatic, but because they were rare. He was not holding her with guilt or expectation. He was giving her freedom. Clara realized that this was not the action of a selfish man, but of someone learning to love honestly. Clara did not answer right away. She needed time to let his words settle. That night, she thought deeply about everything that had happened. She thought about the courage it took to admit mistakes. She thought about how easy it would be to walk away and how hard it would be to stay and try. The next morning, Clara joined Ethan in his work without being asked. They fixed a fence together, working side by side. No big conversation followed, but something important was understood. She was still here. She was choosing to see things through one day at a time. People in town noticed the change. The whispers faded. Respect grew. Ethan's honesty had left a mark, not just on Clara, but on everyone who had witnessed it. He was no longer just the quiet cowboy. He was a man who spoke truth when it mattered most. As the days moved forward, the ranch felt different. Not perfect, but lighter. The tension had not vanished completely, but it no longer ruled the space. Trust was being rebuilt slowly through actions rather than words. Clara knew the future was still uncertain. But she also knew that what mattered most was not a perfect beginning, but the courage to face a difficult moment with honesty, and that, more than anything written in a letter, was what kept her there. Time moved gently at the ranch after everything had been said. There was no sudden change, no dramatic moment where all doubts disappeared. Instead, life continued in small, steady steps. Clara stayed. That choice alone carried meaning. She did not announce it or explain it to anyone. She simply woke up each morning and lived the day as it came. Margaret soon found a small place in town with the help of friends. On the morning she left, there were quiet goodbyes. Clara hugged her, thanking her for her honesty and kindness. Margaret wished Clara peace and strength, and she thanked Ethan for standing by her when she needed help the most. When Margaret's wagon disappeared down the road, the house felt quieter, but also lighter. A chapter had closed without bitterness. With fewer people under the roof, the ranch settled into a calmer rhythm. Clara slowly became part of that rhythm. She learned how to help with daily tasks, not because she was expected to, but because she wanted to understand Ethan's world. She fed animals, helped prepare meals, and learned the names of places on the land that mattered to him. Ethan never treated her like she owed him anything. He thanked her for every effort, no matter how small. They spent long evenings talking. Sometimes they talked about serious things like trust and fear. Other times they spoke about simple moments, like favorite memories or quiet dreams they had never shared before. There was laughter now, soft and real. Clara noticed that she laughed more easily here than she had in years. Ethan noticed it too, and it warmed him in ways he could not easily explain. Still, Clara did not rush her heart. She paid attention to how she felt in his presence. She noticed that she felt safe to speak her mind. When something bothered her, she said it. When she needed space, she took it. Ethan respected her boundaries without question. That respect slowly rebuilt what had been shaken when she first arrived. One afternoon, Clara received a letter from her past life. It was kind, but it reminded her of everything she had left behind. For a moment, doubt returned. She wondered if staying had been the right choice. That evening, she sat alone on the porch, thinking deeply. Ethan noticed her silence, but did not push. He sat nearby, giving her space. Eventually, Clara spoke. She shared her fears about choosing the wrong path and disappointing herself. Ethan listened, then told her something simple. He said that no path was perfect, and that choosing did not mean closing every door forever. He said she was strong for even trying, for stepping into the unknown. His words did not pressure her. They only supported her. As weeks passed, Clara realized something important. She was no longer staying because she felt she had to prove anything. She was staying because she wanted to. The ranch no longer felt like a strange place. It felt familiar. The silence that once scared her now felt peaceful. In town, people noticed the change in both of them. They walked together more often. Clara was greeted with genuine smiles, not curious looks. She was no longer the woman who arrived unexpectedly. She was simply Clara. Ethan, too, had changed. He spoke more, not loudly, but with confidence. He no longer hid behind quiet habits. He had learned that honesty, even when uncomfortable, brought respect. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the sky turned soft and golden, Clara made her decision clear, not with dramatic words, but with a quiet truth. She told Ethan that she wanted to continue building a life there, slowly and honestly. She told him she was not looking for perfection, only sincerity and effort. Ethan did not celebrate loudly or make promises he could not keep. He thanked her. He told her he would continue to choose honesty, even when it was hard. He said that he understood trust was something earned over time, not claimed. That promise meant more to Clara than anything else he could have said. Life continued. Seasons changed. Clara planted a small garden near the house, something that felt like putting roots into the ground. Ethan helped her, even though he knew little about flowers. They learned together. The garden became a symbol of their journey: care, patience, and time. Looking back, Clara realized that the moment she arrived and felt confused had been a turning point, not a mistake. It had revealed truth, tested character, and forced honesty into the open. Without that moment, she might never have truly known the man behind the letters. Ethan often thought about the words he had spoken on the porch, the ones that stunned everyone. He realized that those words had not only changed how others saw him, but how he saw himself. He had learned that real strength was not control, but respect. Not silence, but truth. The ranch remained wide and quiet, just as it always had been. But inside that quiet, something new existed. Not a perfect story, but a real one. Two people choosing patience over fear, honesty over comfort, and presence over promises. And so, the story did not end with a dramatic moment or a loud celebration. It ended with steady days, shared effort, and a life built slowly, one honest choice at a time.